everyone. This video is going to be a brief overview of how to structure and write the introduction portion of your project report, as well as give you a few tips on how to do so. So this is on our introduction. And this is important to go over because writing in this course and in the sciences can be a bit different than writing in the humanities, or for some of you younger students, different than writing when you were in high school. So also for younger students, when you're in high school, the basic structure of your introduction would be first starting with a catchy intro sentence. And this can sometimes occur in the sciences as well, but what defines catchy is a bit different. Scientist writing is more direct in general and tends to use less adjectives and adverbs to somewhat fluff a sentence. It is not so flamboyant, for lack of better words. Next, you are taught to give 2 to 3 supporting or general sentences. And this is somewhat the same as we will see. But finally, you end in a topic sentence. But we're going to discuss that writing for this course and in terms of scientific reports, we'll have some similarities to this, but also have some differences. So we'll go over those as well. Similarities include that both of these are going to end with a topic sentence. But the topic sentence will be a bit different for our course. They all will have an intro plus supportive sentences. And these need to be structured a certain way, as we'll discuss. And then finally, these writings, as well as all writing, are going to tell a story. In science, we're still telling stories. They just tend to be scientific stories. Now, differences in writing for this class versus writing that you all may have done already is that when we're writing a report based on a research project that we've done, the intro is not written first. And this may seem a bit odd, but like I said, we want to tell a story. And our story is based around this topic that we want to investigate. And when we investigate, we get results. Well, we may not actually know the story that we are going to tell until we see some of those results or some preliminary results. So then we use that results to kind of frame the introduction and the overall flow. So when we approach writing research reports, you will write the materials and methods first. Of course, you will have your objective or your topic. But when you start writing, the materials and methods will be first, and it is by far the easiest section to write. Next, you would normally write your results, or at least get some sort of analysis of those results. And then either simultaneously or just after, you would write the introduction and then the discussion. And that is to kind of tie the entire document together. Next, when we write, we're going to go from very broad to very specific information in our introduction. And we'll again talk about the structure of this in just a moment. Next, in this class and the introduction, is often more than one sentence or more than one paragraph. And then when it comes down to what is we call the topic sentence before that it ends with, we actually are going to call the objective here. And this is the very specific goal of your project. And finally, following this objective, there is a hypothesis. And this hypothesis is very similar to what you would have learned when studying the scientific method previously. Now, we're going to go on to talking about the structure of writing the introduction. Like I said, we go from broad to specific. So oftentimes, you can think of this as an upside down triangle or somewhat of a funnel. So I'm going to go here and draw a cone to be a bit creative. And at the top, I'm going to state, remember we're going to have general / broad information. And then at the bottom, it's going to be very specific or focused. And to give you an example of what would go in the different sections, again, this may be 3 paragraphs. Let's change my color. At the very beginning, you might say something along the lines of, I'm going to write about calcium, okay? Beginning, you might say something along the lines of calcium is a mineral required for egg development in poultry. Then we would talk a little bit more, have a few more sentences. But then about the middle, or maybe the next paragraph, you might say something about calcium. Calcium deficiencies result in decreased egg durability, and diets with no calcium seized egg production in chickens. We would talk some more about what is happening, what's going on. And then you get up to a sentence or a couple of sentences right before where you're going to talk about your objective. And you're going to get very specific. It'll take me a moment to write this sentence, but I'm going to give you an example of a very specific lead up to your objective. I just simply skipped the video forward out of respect for everyone's time, so you didn't have to see me write that really long sentence. But here, as we look at a lead up into objectives, an example sentence would be that Mayring et al. 1963 demonstrated that in addition to a decreased egg production, a deficiency in calcium appears to affect bone development and function in the hen, which leads us to believe calcium may have a role in the growth of pullets and the onset of laying. And so that's kind of building. We're kind of building our story as we move this direction. So now we're ready at the point where we would discuss or we would put in our objective. Oftentimes, studies will have more than one objective. In this class, you should only have one. And through the objective and the hypothesis coming up, we will be writing in past tense because when you're writing a report, the research has already happened. So a general structure, we could say something along the lines of, therefore, the objective of this research was to investigate, and you can fill in whatever you're investigating. This example that I've been using, we may say something along the lines of the effects of level of supplementation of calcium on growth and the onset of laying in island. So we might say something along the lines of, therefore, the objective of this research was to investigate the effects of level supplementation of calcium on growth and the onset of laying in Rhode Island red pullets. This is a very specific objective. We are looking at growth. We're looking at how old these animals are when they start laying. The animals we're using are Rhode Island red, which these are chicken. We would then go on to write the hypothesis, change colors, and the hypothesis is very specific to what you think. It's what you perceive is going to happen prior to the research being done. So it's okay to use third person when you write this. It can be I or we if you were working in a group. And some general structures for writing this would be, I hypothesize that. Remember, we're in past tense. You could say the expected outcome was. Or something along the lines of, I expected blank to occur. So for an example for this project, you might say something along the lines of, I hypothesize that a higher concentration of dietary calcium would increase growth rates and decrease the age of when the pullets start laying. It's pretty simple. And it's important to note that even though when you're writing this, it's after analyzing some part of the data at least. So you already know the results, but you still want to state what you thought initially. And it is okay to be wrong. It's okay to not have, hypothesize correctly what's going to happen. This is very common in research to do. And for our projects, it will not affect any grading All right, so that's the general structure. Feel free to use that exactly kind of layout when writing your introduction. It will help you to format what you're talking about. So briefly, there are two more things I want to talk to you about. They're kind of extra notes. I didn't change my color. They're extra notes just to remember when writing this section. One, this section is very important in terms of describing why this research matters. So why research is important. And when you're discussing this, the reason why it's important to do this research may be related to things such as productivity of the animals, may be related to profitability of the enterprise, could be even sustainability, etc. The other thing in this section, which you may have already noticed I was doing above, is that all of the facts and sentences that you're going to put need references. And they need to be reputable. Of course, this doesn't include your objective or your hypothesis because that's personally you in this study. Now, there is another video that discusses how to find references, discussing what is and is not a reputable source. But some of these sources include manuscripts. These are research manuscripts, review articles, textbooks. As you get into higher levels of writing, review articles and textbooks are not necessarily what you want to cite, but for this class, it is perfectly acceptable. Excuse me. I cite government agencies. Such as you may need to cite WHO or the CDC for some reason, and then maybe agriculture extension resources. And of course there are other, but this is just a short list. And when you're going along doing these references, it's pretty important that you cite the sources as you go. If you try to wait till the end and do it all, then it gets very confusing and messy and takes up a lot more of your time. All right, that's all I have for you for the introduction section. Thank you.